Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Deal Scout. On today's show, we're going to have a conversation about angel investing. Marcia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So cat's out of the bag. We're going to talk about angel investing. So why don't you kind of give us an idea about who you are and what are you up to?
Sure. So it was probably about 10 years ago. I got invited to a meeting and somebody said, "Hey, we're going to an angel investing meeting." I was like, "Angel investing? What's that?" No idea. And over time, I just started to learn a little bit more about it. But I remember sitting at the meeting and they're throwing all these terms around, like pre-money valuation. I thought, this is crazy. And my husband's in finance. I'm asking him, what's going on with all this? And he's like, well, I don't know. That's angel speak. But then very quickly, I was totally hooked because I was starting to see so many deals and different kind of companies that were doing things and really starting to see that people were out there trying to make change in the world. And this was something, I was in corporate America at the time. I lived in my own little bubble and I didn't realize how many things were going on out there. And so just started to get more involved. And then over the years, got involved with some different groups, realized how little funding is going to women and minorities, and made that kind of my personal mission to help change that. And then became a member of the board of the Angel Capital Association about 6 years ago. And in July, I took over as the chair.
All right. So this is great. You're sitting there having coffee with a friend and they're like, "Hey, you got to come to this group. What is it? Angel invested." Like, did you think that like someone was going to stand up and draw circles and invite you into some MLM?
I didn't know if when I walked in the room, they'd put a halo on. I didn't know. I had no idea. I was like, what's angel investing?
And then
we invest in an early stage company. Oh, interesting.
So super interesting because your background was in corporate, right? Your husband's in finance, but background in corporate. So when they said invest in startups, what was the first thing that went through your mind when they're like, what's an angel? Well, they invest in startups. Okay. What's the first thing that went through your mind?
I had no idea that I could do that as like an average person. I just thought that was for big firms, like big venture firms that were out in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that only happens on TV, on Wall Street, with these guys with pinstripe suits and old white guys with, gray hair and a cigar, right? That's the image that's passed.
That's exactly right.
Now, when you walked in, what did you see? Because around what year was it when you went to the angel, your local angel group?
It was probably 2011. It was about 10 years ago.
Very cool. All right. So tech was starting to get super hot. We just had a dip in the real estate market. People were exploring, where else should I put my money? Because it sucks in real estate. Right?
That's exactly why we went, because my husband found out about it and he's like, "Hey, this is an alternative asset." And I'm like, "What is that?"
What do you mean?
And he's like, "Well, it's not the stock market. It's not art, but it's kind of like art because it's different. It's a liquid." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Can I ask you a personal question? When you went there, so you have a mission to invest, you want to see more funding go towards more opportunity, go towards women and minorities. You walked in, how was women represented there when you walked in 2011?
Well, the good news in my case for the particular group that I was going to was run by a woman.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which was awesome. And she's awesome.
Yeah.
But the number of women that were in the room were very few. And actually, I ended up going to several Angel Capital Association meetings, and we used to joke that the line at the ladies' room was non-existent and the line at the men's room was really long, which is usually completely the opposite if you go to like baseball games.
Yeah. So the secret is, if I ever have to go to the bathroom or whatever, and I'm at an angel, right? But has things changed since 2011, right? So you walk in newbie, right? The new gal walking in to now running as chair. What has changed over the past 10 years?
Some things have changed quite a bit and other things have not changed at all. So if you look across the board, like I said, when I kind of got into the picture, there were very few women investors. Now we're up to, I believe the number's right around 25, 27% of angel investors are female, which is a real big uptick from about 5%. However, if you look at the funding that's actually going to women, and there was a study that was done during 2020, so they looked at all of the investing that was happening during COVID, And the numbers really didn't change. So less than 5% of all venture dollars are going to women still, and minorities are getting way, 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 way less.
Oh, all right. So in your mission, one of your missions is to focus on more opportunities for women and minorities. Now, where are they currently going for capital, or are they just not? Are they not building stuff? Are they not going places? Are they getting turned down? Like, what's the current situation, do you think?
Well, they're definitely building really great, amazing, cool things. Diverse teams have been proven to do better with revenues. And at the end of the day, when it comes to them getting funding, they're really struggling because first of all, when you go to raise money, if you're a startup and you're a founder, the first place that you're told to go is to go to your friends and family. Well, in a lot of cases, these folks don't have friends and family with big wallets that they can go to be able to get funding to start. So then what do? Then they try to find angels, but it really does take a lot of effort and time to build those relationships and to kind of get to know who's who in your ecosystem. So over the years, though, there has been some change where more of the cities between Silicon Valley and New York are starting to really come online and put some economic development behind what they're doing in their city so that they can start to get this entrepreneurial ecosystem going.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was building my first fitness technology company, people said, you need to go to your friends and family and ask them for money. And I grew up on a construction site, right? And I didn't know anybody who had money, right? Or the guy that I did know who had money ran a manufacturing company, which had nothing to do with technology. And the advice he was giving me was way off because I was building technology, right? So, angels aren't walking around like you joked about earlier with like these wings and a halo. So you can't say, identify them. Hey, you're an angel investor investing in early stage businesses. This is what I have. So where do you think moving forward for women and minorities, specifically, where can they go? What's a good resource, or where's a good place for them to learn about how do I build a business that's ready for investment capital or find opportunities to work with angels?
So a couple things.
Yeah.
First of all, building relationships is always going to be key, and it's never ever too early to do that. So there's a saying out there that says, if you're looking for money, ask for advice. And if you're looking for advice, ask for money. So what I tell people is go and just try to build some relationships where you're just asking for advice. Hey, what do you think of this idea? What do you think? Who do you know that is involved in this? At one point, I was asked to be on a board of a company, and I told them flat out, I'm like, look, I'm not the right person for you because you need somebody that has this particular area of expertise I don't have. So just because somebody's willing to be an advisor to your company doesn't necessarily mean they're the best one. But if you're looking for something specific, like in your case, you were looking for somebody to help you to build tech, well, start asking people that hey, who could possibly start to mentor me? That's one way. Another thing is you literally can go on Google, our friend Google, and say, hey, where are my angel groups in, and just fill in the city like Cincinnati or I mean, it could be any smaller, city. It doesn't have to be California or New York. And so you can start to find out like who are the groups in my area. And in some cases, like there's a group that is really a national group across the country that invests in women-led companies called Golden Seeds. And they do an excellent job of getting people office hours, we call it. So people can go and just ask questions. There's no pressure. It's not about fundraising yet. It's more about like, how can I talk to some people so that I could get some actual advice on how to fundraise? And the third thing I'll mention is there's a new way to, and I call it new because the SEC just approved it back in 2018, and that is about crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is where you can get lots and lots of little checks, but you do that through a platform. There's a great platform out there called Republic, which I know pretty well. And you can just go onto their site and you could talk, put up your company and show what your company is doing and potentially get some investors that way. Now, that is not an if you build it, they're coming. you really do have to talk to other people, and you kind of have to work your own fundraise. But it is a way that you could get those smaller checks, especially when you're at the very early, like friends and family round.
Yeah. And that is 2018 was such a great year for startups because of that crowdfunding rule from the SEC, which is funny because we just released an episode today with Chuck over at Republic. So,
Yeah.
so
How about that?
we just released it just a second ago. All right. So, all right, let's say this. You and I are going into business. You got 51% of the business, right? And we're building this. You're CEO, and I'm kind of like the operator integrator, which is totally a lie because that's not my skill set. However, role play, this is the scenario. All right.
Okay.
We need to raise money. Currently, we have an idea, a really awesome pitch deck, customer validation in terms of we've got ideas out there. People said, yes, if you build it, I'll buy it. No purchase orders or stuff like that. All right. But we need to raise an initial bit of money to get going. What should you and I do? And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me, you're the CEO. What should we do, Marcia?
I would go back to start whatever the product is, whatever the company is, start to find the people who are have expertise in that area that are not necessarily in your network, but maybe in your network once removed or twice removed. And honestly, LinkedIn is probably one of the best places to be able to do that. I mean, that is how you and I met.
Yep.
So just going out and looking for people and saying to them, hey, I'll just give you a good example. I get emails or, messages through LinkedIn all the time that say, hey, I'm raising $50,000. I need to talk to you. Okay. I don't want to talk to anybody that starts our relationship like that. Okay. So let's just be clear that if you really want to start to build relationships with investors, you have to start to figure out who is in my network or outside of my network that I can connect to that will be able to start to talk to me more about how I can make my business successful. Because angels don't just bring money. That's what a lot of people get tied up. They think, oh, if I just had $100,000 or $1 million, whatever they think they need, if I just had that money, all of a sudden everything would be great and I would have, I'd be to the moon. But it isn't necessarily going to be the case. You really need help with opening doors to, maybe you have a product and you want to get it into Target. Well, I just had a company the other day that was asking me that. I started asking a bunch of, my angel friends, and somebody had an in. So all of these things are what an entrepreneur needs. It's like, it takes a village is what I always say. So
yeah. So, all right. So we're building the business and you're like, okay, Josh, step one, we need to go have conversations with people who either been in this industry, invest in these kind of businesses. So we start having conversations, and here we're going to do it. Just a quick LinkedIn training for everyone listening in. Just because someone has the angel next to their name doesn't mean that you get to just go up to them and go, give me 50 grand. Right.
Right.
I like to look at this, right? You and I, we're building our business. We're in a coffee shop and someone comes up and they go, hey, this is one of my friends. And they go, hey, Marcia, how are you? Oh, what are you working on? Hey, I saw that you're connected with, so-and-so and such like that. I heard, what could I do to help you? Right. So like someone's leaning into value rather than, hey, I need 50 grand, give me money. Right. So
right.
Just as we would interact with people in a coffee shop, that's how we should interact with people on LinkedIn. Do you agree, or am I off?
No, totally. And also, do a little bit of research on the person that you're trying to connect with. And I'm not talking like even an hour. I'm talking like 5-10 minutes. And you may find that you have a connection with them, not necessarily a person, but something else that you can say, hey, I saw that you spoke at, this event. Oh, I was at an event similar to that. And I'd really like to get my company featured. And I mean, you could go on and on with all different kinds of ideas, but I don't usually connect with people that I don't know on LinkedIn, but I will end up having a conversation with somebody if they approach me and say, hey, I know that you and I have this, that, or the other thing in common. And I'd really like to, get your opinion or know who else I might, that I might be able to talk to. That's another thing too. You don't always have to say like, I want some of your time, because none of us have time. We're all busy. Everybody says, oh, I'm so busy. I get it. But we all can make time if it's something that we want to make time for. So give them a reason or ask them who else they might know who would be able to have the expertise that they're looking for.
Yeah, I love that question. Who do you know who, right? So it's like,
Right.
hey, who do you know who invests in fitness technology companies for penguins in Alaska, right? You're like, oh, I got a guy or a gal, right? But it's that who do you know who? All right, so back to we're building a business, we're in a coffee shop, and I'm like, hey, what's a really good book? And now behind, for everybody just listening in, behind Marcia, there's tons of books, hundreds of books, right? If you had to pick one for an early stage business, an early stage startup, which book would you peel off your shelf and give to me? Because I'm a noob, no clue what I'm doing. Which book would you give me?
So there is a guy in our industry, his name's Brad Feld. And he has written several books. There's a book called Venture Deals that he wrote. Now, if you are having insomnia, you could read some of the book and it would probably put you to sleep. And I only say that because it is one of the greatest books when it comes to the structuring and all of the mechanics of what you would need to do for your startup. But it isn't a story. It's not a fairy tale. It's not like a bedtime story. It is literally lots and lots of concentrated information to help you build your business. Everything. And I think the tagline on it is something like, everything your lawyer never told you,
Right.
which it's so true. I mean, I reference that book so often because it's like, wait a minute, there's terms in this term sheet. They talk about pro rata rights, or this or that. And you're always like, well, let me see, because they give it good examples of, what does this mean? And what does it mean for me as a founder? And so what kind of rights am I giving up if I agree to this? So it's that kind of a book. And I think that so often when an entrepreneur goes into negotiation, when it comes to taking in money, they have to understand all of the nuances of what it means. And it's going to cost them a lot of money if their lawyer has to explain it all to them.
Yeah. All right. We're back at the coffee shop. We built something ready for money, right? So we're raising money. We're going to do an initial round, 500K. Okay. You and I, and we're sitting, the terms look beautiful, right? So we met with an investment group. Terms look incredible. However, you look at the people, or you look at the term sheet, even though the terms, money makes sense, but you still say, Josh, it's not a good idea. We're walking. What would be that thing that makes you turn down money? If on paper it looks good, what would make you turn down the money?
Okay. So the fundraise is like getting to the wedding, and then taking the money, that's the marriage. So if I was getting some kind of weird feeling about the group, like we weren't going to be able to work together, or I thought that they weren't going to be very coaching or helping, or that maybe they thought they were trying to bring in other people that we didn't necessarily know already and try to put them into our company, then I would get a little squirrely.
Yeah. So in the angel world and venture world, there's something called dumb capital and smart capital, right?
Yes. Yep.
So so give me an example of where dumb capital could come in, right? So it's Grandma Ida who has a couple $1,000,000, but like why might we not want to take Grandma Ida's money or whatever? Where could dumb capital? And maybe that's a terrible example. Someone out there has a grandma named Ida and super offended. I'm sorry, guys. Let's run with a role play here because we're learning. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, dumb money is just basically saying like somebody's just writing a check and they don't really know how to help the company. So it's back to my example of like somebody asked me to be on their board and I'm like, look, I'm not the right person. So at the very earliest of stages. So in our example here, where you and I, Josh, are going out and raising 500K, we're looking for those very first investors who are not just going to help us with money, but they're going to help us to catapult our idea. And so then they say dumb money, it just means that you don't have anything else behind the money to help. So if you really want to invest in the business and you really don't have anything, expertise wise or network wise to offer, then you want to surround yourself with those other people. That's why angels usually never invest by themselves.
Yeah.
They invest with a group. we've kind of flocked together so that we can help each other out and use each other's expertise.
Yeah. So, when I'm looking at investors, the things that I look for, wealth, right? You want someone who could write disposable income, right? So if they lose it, startup could be risky. If they lose it, they're not going to show up at my door with a baseball bat, right?
That's exactly right.
Wisdom, right? They bring some knowledge of expertise. They're going to work in the business. Like if I call them up, it's, like in the terms or whatever, I just say, what are my expectations? If I call you up, if I need you, you're answered. So work and then network. Like you said, birds of a feather, angels of a feather flock together. So
Yeah.
I want their network too, because their network could be more valuable. I need to get in Target. Well, Susie knows a person at Target, right? Not just a cashier, but someone on the purchasing order. So wealth, wisdom, work, and network is what I look for. Are there any other things that you really look for in a partnership with an investor?
So how about the follow-on capital? So you don't just want somebody who's going to invest their initial check, but can they bring in other monies later? So with the rise of funds over the last several years, that has been a great way for entrepreneurs to not just get initial capital, but to be able to hit some milestones so that they can get follow-on funding. So there's several funds out there. When we say funds, it means that it's a manager or three that have kind of come together and they're going to manage the money of, in the case that we're using, we'll just say other angels. Okay. Because that's venture capital right there. The biggest difference between angel investing and venture capital is angel investors write their own checks, and venture capital, right, they manage other people's money. So these funds that I'm talking about are like angel funds. Basically, they're smaller, but they are managed by another person, and it gives a lot of diversification to the investors. We could have a whole episode on that, Josh.
And we should.
Yeah, we should. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get as much capital to the entrepreneur as possible. And these funds we call it like, follow-on money will be put aside so that money can then go toward a later round. And that's super important too, because you don't want to end up investing and then all of a sudden the company runs out of money and then you're left high and dry.
Yeah. Now there's a saying in the angel world, angels don't fly. Right. And that's why, looking at local investors is pretty important. Is that just a misnomer? Is that changed with, the world going remote in 2020? What's your experience with this?
It absolutely changed with the world going remote in 2020. It was 100% true. Well, I shouldn't say 100%. It was like very, very true for a lot of angel groups. They only wanted to invest in their own backyard, or the rule was if you could drive there in the morning, have a meeting and be back by dinner time, that was that was the distance that you could go, but no airplanes. So that's really changed. And we have seen a lot of different groups, they want really solid companies to invest in. We call that good deal flow. And so they will go anywhere to get that good deal flow nowadays. But we also see with that, it's really, really, really positive for the entrepreneur, because it means that more groups are syndicating and collaborating together to make sure that those rounds get filled out.
All right. So what is syndicating? Like paint that picture of what syndication and syndicating is.
So I'll just give you an example of something that happened last night. My group, Mindshift Capital, invested in a company, and I knew the lead investor because they are a fund that I've known for a long time. And then a couple other angel groups that I know also invested in this particular company. And it came around that, Mindshift was, had, found out about the company a little bit later in the fundraising cycle, which was fine. And we all just kind of closed out the deal last night. It was great. And so we all pulled together and kind of got our resources together as far as like, hey, what did you find out about the company? Like we kind of all talk amongst ourselves. So like, don't ever tell an investor something that you don't want all the investors to know, because we do talk to each other. Right. And so we would like talk amongst ourselves and be like, hey, what kind of diligence did you do? Because angels, they don't have the time and the bandwidth and the money to be doing tons of diligence on companies, but we have to do diligence. So we're going to try to make sure that we know everything about your company. But if I'm talking to one of your customers and one of my other angel group friends is talking to one of your customers, you as the entrepreneur, you don't want 100 people talking to your same poor customer, right? So have one person talk and then share it with everybody else. And that's what we do.
Yeah. What are the benefits for the entrepreneur for syndication? Like, why do I want other investors talking about my business?
Well, you probably can't fill out your full round or what with the money you're trying to raise just off of one or two groups. You need to have more people involved. But the other thing is, the more that we collaborate together on other deals, that makes it better for the entrepreneurs, even, down the road, because we now know each other. We know, I now know that, this other particular group, they might have that network into Target or, but that I learned that because I know them from other deals. So like all of this, collaboration really, really helps the entrepreneur.
All right. 2011, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
your husband's like, hey, you should go check this thing out. Real estate's not doing too good. He's like, you go check this out. 10 years later, you guys are sitting down, now he comes sit down, has coffee with us. We're building our business. Now you're downloading all the information that you shared. Like, what questions, like, did you outpace him in terms of like knowledge of the startup industry and capital and all these terms and such like that?
Of my
like,
husband?
yeah.
Oh, totally. Like within like 10 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. No, he's
If he's watching,
he's a really smart finance guy. No, but you start to learn, and every industry is like this. Every industry has like their little acronyms and the things that they talk about and their little lingo. And so it does take, a minute or three to learn that. And that at the Angel Capital Association, we have lots of classes. You can learn all about it. But it's just like anything else. You learn it and you get to know kind of what's happening in the industry, and you kind of just catapult it from there.
Sounds good. What if I asked him, what is Marcia's superpower? Like in business, like what is she better at than any other angel investor in the universe? What's her superpower? What would he say?
Oh, that's funny. That's a good question. I am an extremely resourceful person. So I will kind of pick out I will just dig and dig and dig and dig to find whatever is the resource that's needed for any particular thing. And I think my my portfolio company CEOs appreciate that, because when they're like, hey, we got a problem. Well, I'm definitely not a panicker either. I'm like my team a long time ago, they used to describe me as a heartbeat, because I was just like very even keeled about things. So I think it's just about, making sure that when there's a crisis, and there's always a crisis going on with a startup, because you're in startup mode, it's hard. It's really hard work, but you figure out, what's needed, and you get the right people on it, and you can actually save the entrepreneur a ton of time. That is really another one of my super missions, is to make sure that the entrepreneurs, as they're fundraising, as they're building their business, they're not wasting time and energy where they don't need to.
Oh yeah, it is. I remember working a full-time job, building a company, my fitness company, had hundreds of clients, and like trying to manage that all. I put myself in the hospital, right?
I believe it.
It was absolutely terrible. It was on the 4th of July week or whatever. So I spent the 4th of July thinking I had either a heart attack or an ulcer. So like and this, I just didn't know, right? So like this ecosystem is evolving, the knowledge is evolving and such like that. If I had to go back, I would have totally looked for advisors. I would have looked for potential partners and investors, even if they didn't put capital in, so that they could bring their experience to the table, because I had no experience paving and pioneering the way, and I almost died, right? Sucks. And I also cashed out my pension to do that. I was all in. So actually, this is a good question. On the flip side, so now you and I, we built our business, had a major exit, right?
Nice.
Huge exit. Pop bottles of champagne, had a blast. You and your family went on a vacation. My family bought an RV, and we drove around. We came back and we're like, okay, we're bored. We want to get back in the game as investors.
Usually what happens with entrepreneurs. Yep.
Isn't that what most angel investors are made up of? Business people who had some exits, right?
Business people. I mean, it takes a long time to get exits. That's why it's called patient capital.
Yeah. All right. So now we are looking for cool people to invest in. What are we looking for? So let's leave industry aside. We're looking at the people here. What do we look for in a person, right? Black, white, brown, female, wait, let's just say, what characteristics do we look for in a person? What kind of personalities, what kind of characteristics do we look for?
So I would have to say the passion for what they're doing is super important. So I ended up investing. One of the first investments I made was in a company where they went out of business quite quickly. And it came down to the CEO just decided he needed a job, like basically to keep the lights on, like at his home, which I totally understand. But he just was never that passionate about the business. And it was one of my first investments. So I didn't know anything from anything. And I now looking back, I realized, wow, I should have seen that red flag like right away. So I think passion is definitely a part of it. And, just that tenacity, you kind of know when you meet somebody that if they have the tenacity to keep going, even when the going gets really hard, like you had said, you're like in the hospital, everything is so crazy. And you have to be able to there's going to be bad days, but you got to pick yourself back up and keep going.
There's going to be, as a founder, there's going to be bad decades, right? Like
Yeah, right. Bad years.
It might suck for a while. All right. So what other things do you look for? So example, when I go out with someone that, like we go out for coffee or something like that, and I'm interested in getting they're asking me to sit on their board or be a part of their business or help them raise capital, whatever the case may be. I watch how they treat the wait staff.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I look for that. And if people are treating people mean, like my whole thing is I love God, people, and deals. Right. So, if you treating people mean, that's the reason I'm doing this. They're out. Right. I'm out.
Right.
What are there certain things that you look for, like little nuances that you're like, told you, turn the business off, you're done, you just walk away? So passion is one. What else?
Well, so I'll give you an example. There was a really awesome angel a while ago who taught me this. If you get the founders to introduce each other or talk about the other one in front of them, it's really interesting what they'll say, because you kind of get to know how well they know each other and then how they work together. And if there's any kind of a riff going on in between, the founders or whatever the story is. So yeah, that could be super helpful.
Do you ever see angels or yourself invest in solopreneurs?
So that's tough. I've seen it where maybe it's a solo founder, but then they go ahead and build a team around them. But usually they always say that you should have a co-founder, and it really does help when you have a team and you have somebody else who's kind of in the thick of it with you, because on those days or years or decades that get bad, you have somebody else there with you, because you hope anyway, you're not going to both be in the dumps at the same time. One picks up the other and then you kind of go on.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And here's a mistake I made early on. I've made a lot. I'm writing a book on how many mistakes I made. Here's one of them: is I held this baby that I was building so close in all this equity, because the advice I got from dumb money was, you need to maintain control, you need to keep all the equity, right? So the whole time people are asking, hey, I want to help, and they're adding value and such like that. And I held this on to myself, and it wound up drowning me, right? If I had to go back, man, partners, bringing in a co-founder who wasn't just like me, who was technical, right, who was very operative, right? They could put systems, processes, technology. I screwed up. So I look for people who maybe single co-founder, founder, but they have a team. But man, it's so important to have people because it's a brutal journey. Next question. We're gonna have some fun. All right. So now we built our business. We had an exit. Now we're starting to look at, investing. Why would you choose being an angel investor, right? Because we've got disposable income. We could write big checks. Why would you choose being an angel investor than being a capital, or venture capitalist, hedge fund? Or why would you choose being an angel?
Well, angels get in at the earliest of stages. So, and that's where you can affect the most change. So if there are things that you want to see in the world, changes that you want to see in the world, you really have to start to back the things that are going to create that kind of change. And that really comes at these really earliest of stage levels. And also, just being able to develop more of a community in some of these smaller areas, like they call them the flyover states, between New York and San Francisco, being able to create more communities and create jobs. I mean, that's a big reason why angels do what they do. It's not because we're just out to get rich quick, because it's definitely, as I said, not quick. And in a lot of cases, you're not getting rich. You're really have to be in it for a lot of other reasons. If you just wanted to try to make money, then you should just probably go try to play in the stock market. But, for angels, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a difference and help back the companies where we want to see change. And a good example is in women's health. So keeping in mind how little funding goes to female founders, well, there's a lot of female founders out there working on some amazing things to help to improve all of the things that are out there in the world in order to help women's health. And it's very hard for those women founders to get funding. So how do we do that? We need to kind of band together. And that's why there's a lot of us out there that now have the Angel Capital Association to thank for kind of bringing us together. Every month we have a meeting and we all talk about kind of what types of deals we're funding and the things that are going on in the world.
How else do angels impact communities? Or like, because you mentioned these flyover areas, right? Like why should a chamber or a local city like really help support, angel groups?
Well, I can tell you that one of our angel groups in Arizona just did a study of their own dollars that they invested. And they said that in a year, for every $100,000 that they invest, and most angel groups will invest anywhere from in a year, probably anywhere from $1 million to maybe $5 million, depending on the size of the group, and up, because there's a couple big groups out there that'll invest a lot of money. But let's say on average, it's like $2 to $3 million. So for every $100,000 that they invested, this group in Arizona, they created 5.8 direct jobs, which equaled $458,000 in wages. But what that did is it added about $2.1 million in economic output just for their area of Tucson, Arizona. So, I mean, this is a big deal. If you take, that's just what happens with every $100,000. Imagine you take that across many, many different ecosystems across the country, and we're talking about a lot of job creation.
Yeah. So we had this major windfall, like we big exit, big exit, right? Like, and we're looking at, being an angel investor, we're looking at the impact, and we're like, you know what? We want to dive back in the game. It's fun. We want to help support founders and entrepreneurs, and you want to help with women and minorities, and you want to help invest in their companies. Now let's talk industry niches that you like. So women's health is kind of like a broad category. What is a niche in that you think is super vital and that's underrepresented, and that you think that angel investors out there should pay attention to?
Well, you talked about it earlier when you talk about tech. So, lots of angel venture capitalists, they really want to talk about technology and investing in technology. So, we talk about health tech, we talk about fintech, ed tech, food tech. There's all kinds of things going on in technology. So I think when you get into some of these specific niches of how can, like for your example with women's health, how can we be working on something that's going to be impactful across, a large group, or how can it really make a big difference in a woman's life, in their overall like kind of life cycle journey.
Very cool. All right. We're back at the coffee shop, and my 8-year-old daughter walks up, right? Beautiful. Lily Grace. Love the girl. She's my best buddy, right? You get to give her one piece of advice. What piece of advice would you give my 8-year-old daughter?
You can do anything that you put your mind to, and don't let anybody tell you that because you're a girl, you can't do that.
Yeah. And if they do, you're going to go whoop their butt, right?
That's right.
Awesome. All right. All right. So what's the best question you've ever been asked by, an angel investor that you're like, wow, we never thought of it, right? We have courses and such like that, but an angel investor, maybe newbie, comes in and they ask you a question. You're like, that's a really good question. What do you think that question could be?
So I'll tell you a question. I'll give you an example. I
Okay.
like examples. Recently I was asked, if you could invest, you have 10 companies to look at and you have money that you have to invest in one of the 10 companies. But you're only allowed to ask one question. What is the question that you would ask to these 10 companies to decide?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Isn't it?
That's so
Thought
good.
that was good. It took me a while to think about it a little bit, but here's the question I would ask. How are you as a founder going to pay it forward once your company does well?
Huh. I'm thinking through all the meaning behind that, right? Wow, that's good. All right, so let's post that again. How are you, if I'm interested in investing in you, right? I invest in you. I'm going to help Wealth Wisdom Work Network. I'm going to invest in you. How are you going to pay it forward when you are, air quote, successful? What if they don't come up with a good answer?
It's kind of like anything. Like when I do an
Yeah.
interview with somebody, I'll just start off by saying, tell me about yourself. And they get kind of flustered. They're like, oh, what do you mean? Like, should I tell you about my personal life or my professional life or whatever? I'm like, tell me anything you want to tell me. You
Yeah.
start wherever you want to start. But that you can tell a lot about a person just by that. Okay.
Mhm.
So no, it doesn't really matter what the answer is of the person who you're saying, tell me about how you pay it forward. I just want to know their thought process. How did they get to that answer? They
Mhm.
could tell me some really elaborate answer, great. Okay. Or they could tell me like something in 3 words. But either way, it's just like, how did they think through it? How did they come across what are you can tell a little bit about their values. I really love the idea of random acts of kindness, and it's become more of a thing lately, which is awesome. I
Yeah.
just heard the other day, somebody was talking about how, they asked the person behind them at the Starbucks line and they paid for 3 drinks, from behind. You hear a lot more about that nowadays than you used
Yeah.
to. So that's the type of thing I'm trying to get at. Like, are they going to be like for your example earlier? Are they nice to the waitress or waiter? Do they? How are they thinking about mankind, really?
Yeah. All right. We find your phone and we open the music app and we play your most played song in your music app. What is your most played song?
Right now, it has
Yeah.
to be "Levitating" by Dua Lipa. I love that song.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. My kids were singing it the other day. All right. As you're building this, what does victory look like to you? How do you know you're winning? You're an angel investor. You're running the association. You guys are, creating all these courses. How do you know you're winning?
Oh, that's a good question, because at the beginning of 2020, I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
I talked to one of my angel buddies who's been in the business, like, who's been doing angel investing way longer than me. And I'm like, at this point, like 8 years in, and I'm like, I don't know about this angel investing stuff. Like, this takes forever. You get an exit. Like, what the heck? Like, what am I even doing this for? Blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously there's a lot of other rewards, but you get to a point where you're like, could I get some kind of a financial reward here? And he's like, he starts kind of laughing at me. He's like, just wait, you'll be fine. And sure enough, in 2020, there were a couple of companies that did pretty well. So then I had it renewed my faith.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a, man, in this world where we're investing in people, payoffs take a long time.
They do.
Right.
Yeah.
Stock market, you could see it go up and down and this and that. But
Right.
when you
Yeah.
invest in
Instant
people,
gratification.
it's a long play. It's patient. All right. When should someone choose to go to an angel group rather than venture capital, or rather than friend? Like when should we go to an angel, for a business? What's like a good fit? What's not a good fit?
Well, it's probably a good fit it's always, like I said, always go start talking early,
Yeah.
like right now, like just drop whatever you're doing right now and go talk to an angel investor. But but really, once your idea has some traction, you've got, at a minimum, a prototype that's working, you've got some customer traction, you've gotten feedback, maybe if it's something that you can have sales, that's not, FDA needing FDA approval and all that kind of stuff, you could, go, maybe you have a couple $100,000 in sales, those types of things. That's probably where angels play.
Okay. Next scenario. You ready? This is fun. Well, at least for me. I send you a message. We've been talking a little bit and you're like, cool. Hey, I'd like to know more, Josh. You seem nice guy. You treat the waiters great. You say you want to give back into the community, and we're ready to kind of get into a little bit of the details, just a basic executive summary pitch deck maybe. And I said,
Right.
Great, Marcia, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you my NDA, which is a non-disclosure, agreement. I'm going to send you that before I send you any information. What happens in your brain just right there as an investor?
I would be hanging up, and that would be the end of the conversation.
Why so?
Angels don't sign NDAs. We
Why
look
not?
at way too many deals. We write checks out of our own checkbook. The last thing I need is some kind of a legal document that somebody like 5 years down the road says, hey, you said you weren't going to tell anybody about my company. I'm like, I don't even remember what company you are. And they're like, oh yeah, but you went on and invested in XYZ company, which is a lot like my company. And now they're doing what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, but I didn't tell them that. Well, you signed this saying that you wouldn't tell them. So, and it could go on and on and on and on. So no, angels don't sign NDAs. And if you are working with a lawyer who is not a startup lawyer, your lawyer could potentially tell you, you've got to get people to sign these NDAs. And that is a huge rookie move, because to me, if I get at the earliest of stages, people ask me to sign an NDA, I'm like, rookie.
Right. And now I've sat in room with investors, right? They were bringing me in. They're like, hey, Josh, we want you to take a look at a deal. We sat at the deal and they pulled out NDAs. I go, whoop, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Out of here.
It's not a good way to build trust in a relationship. Right.
Now, at a venture capital level, I've had this debate with several of my venture capital friends.
Yeah.
At a venture capital level, when you're into, a lot more IP, meaning intellectual property, and you're getting into a lot bigger dollars, bigger checks, you've got a venture firm behind you, that's a different story. They tend to sign NDAs. But at the angel level, angel groups, no.
Yeah. That was another mistake. Like I said, I'm writing a book of all the mistakes. That was another mistake I made. I'm going to share two of them, and I'd love your feedback on that. One was I held my idea close to my chest and I didn't talk about it. Right. As I, worked through venture capital and private equity and other angel groups and such like that, I learned, talk about your idea to everybody, because nobody's going to execute on your idea.
Nobody cares. And if you don't talk about it, then they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? That you're not talking about your idea. Yeah. They just think you're goofy.
Why aren't you talking about it? Like, you should talk about it to everyone. Right. So because nobody's going to steal your idea. Everybody has this fear. Hey, I'll tell you about my idea, but you got to sign, this 20-page document with your kid's blood. And you're like, oh, get out of here. Right. So that was the first mistake that not the first, but one amongst many. Second. All right. So you're sitting in front of a founder and they're pitching their idea to you. And then you're like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And they go, wait, I got another idea. And then another idea. And then another idea. So they just, you're having coffee. The first idea was actually pretty cool, and I'm interested in learning more. But then they pitch 10 more. What happens in your brain as an angel investor?
Yeah, no focus.
Yeah,
they're like squirrel. Yeah, not happening.
That was me. I lost an investment because of that. The guy goes, Josh, what are you doing? Like, that was a great idea. I was like, well, I thought ideas were valuable. He goes, no, we want one idea that you're going to run with it, execute on it, protect my money. And he goes, because of that, I'm out. And I go, that sucked. That hurt. Well,
I'll give you an example. So I just invested in a company not too long ago, and they're a white label tech platform, but they're really focused on the fitness industry. So, but they got approached because it's such a cool tech play. They got approached by like a culinary school and a couple other places, like that would be a teaching, like instead of fitness teaching and different teaching, and then another type of teaching platform. And they were like, whoa. We have to keep focused on where we're going to get, we've got our bread and butter right here. If we start going too, spreading the peanut butter too thin, as we say, then they're going to end up, losing it all.
Yeah, because it's hard enough for customer acquisition to acquire customer, but if you spread too thin, it's going to be even harder to keep a customer, because now you have to learn the needs of the culinary group and the needs of the fitness group, and then the needs of this.
Exactly.
You may think that revenue is helpful, but it might kill you too.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I just made that up. It seems smart at the moment. It was my head. All right. So, as we're building this out, we have this major exit, we're having fun, we're investing in companies, and, we're looking at groups. Like, when would you decide to dive in beyond money a little and kind of go like, this is cool, I really like this idea? Like, what's one of your passion projects or a group that you're invested with that you're just like, I love this group and you love being a part of it?
Okay, I'll tell you my biggest passion project, which has been the last couple of years. It's a bakery, which is not something that angels typically invest in. However, it's called Misfits Bakehouse. They're out of Silicon Valley, actually, because I used to live out there for a couple minutes. And anyway, they make gluten-free, grain-free baked goods, and they are some of the most delicious things you've ever tasted in your life. And for people who have celiac disease and other autoimmune issues, it's very hard to find this type of bread or baked good or anything like that. So I actually met the founder at the farmer's market. I had my husband taste it, and I told him, I'm like, it's gluten-free and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, he's lying. He's like, which he's absolutely not lying, because he does have celiac patients and they would be very, very sick if he was lying. So he's not lying. But he's like, this is so, so good. And over the years, he's kind of engineered his own flour. It's a little bit like the Coca-Cola recipe, so that he can make, these amazing products. And he's getting to the point now, though, where his demand is so high that we are going to have to figure out, this isn't just a passion project anymore, that we're going to have to figure out how we can start to really scale the business. But these are ways that places like Sweet Greens and other types of food places that people don't normally think that they should invest in would invest in.
That's pretty cool. So what's your favorite question that you like to be asked, like on podcast shows? Because you've been on podcast shows, you have your own podcast show, so you should tell us about your show. And what is the favorite question that you either like to ask your guest or be asked?
So I do have my own podcast show through the Angel Capital Association. We call it the Angel Next Door. And it's really about, how do we get more people to be angel investors? So I guess that would have to be part of my question that I like to ask or be asked, is just the conversation around that. Because the SEC believes that there are about 16 million people in the US who meet what we call the accredited investor definition, meaning that they can make an investment because the government thinks that they have enough wealth or income to do so. Not any smarts, just wealth or income. And so the SEC has said, there's 16 million people. Well, right now it's estimated that only about 300,000 people at max are doing any type of early stage or angel investing. So it's like a millifraction of the people that could potentially do it. And I talk to people a lot, and I say something about angel investing, and they're like, oh, what's that? So I have this conversation over and over again. I'll be somewhere and people say, what do you do? And I'll talk about angel investing, and they'll say, well, we don't even know what that is. And so the only thing that people can really equate it to is something like Shark Tank, because they see, oh, okay, wait a minute, I kind of understand what investing in an early stage company is because I watch Shark Tank. But Shark Tank also makes you believe that you have to have a private plane and, billions of dollars in order to do it. And so the reason why I call the podcast The Angel Next Door is because it really is in everybody's backyard. There are people who are angels. And I actually am very thankful for Shark Tank, because they have given us a platform to kind of let people know, hey, it is like this, but it's really more in reality and what happens in real life. Because you saw, you could use universities as a good example. A university could have some really great technology that's being developed, and then somebody takes that technology and tries to build it into a company. And then, well, then what happens? Well, you got to get some funding around it. So you do that and you kind of like build a company from there. And so you can kind of watch the whole progression of it just from what's happening in your local community.
Yeah, it is so cool. And like the impact is just absolutely incredible. So for people who want to connect with you and learn more about you, about your podcast show, about the association, where's a good place for people to start?
So they can come to the angelcapitalassociation.org website. And right there, there'll be a little icon that'll take you right to the podcast. You can find the podcast, though, on anything that you listen to podcasts on, Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever you listen on. So just look up the Angel Next Door and you'll be able to find me.
Cool. Thank you for coming on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening into the Deal Scout. As always, now this is a special shout out. If you're out there and you're interested in, maybe exploring what angel investing is, maybe that this is an asset class that you'd like to explore, learn more about, my ask to you is that you reach out to the group over at Angel Capital Association, reach out to Marcia. All their links will be in the show notes below. Reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in getting into this. Don't even know where to start, but connect with our guests. Say thank you for being on the show and find a way to deal with them. Till then, talk to you all on the next episode. See you guys.